Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Okay, guys, Jenna dared me to open with that. So here we are, opening our courageous conversations with kind of a kooky intro. But today's topic of conversation is resolving conflict between two or more employees. And so I wanted to start out with asking Jenna a question. Jenna, why do, as leaders, we need to be in charge of conflict resolution? I mean, can't we just get along and figure it out ourselves? Or maybe if there's conflict between two people, can't we just send them into a different room and say, all right, figure it out and come out when you've got it figured out?
I think as probably people that mediate quite a bit, that's what you would think, because a lot of times it just comes down to understanding and communication. But this is really a loaded question, Shelly. Obviously, I feel like, leaders or HR don't always need to step in. For one, I think a lot of times this stuff just gets handled by people who are willing and able to handle conflict resolution. But as we're all aware, we're not all cut from the same mold. Everybody's different. Everyone has a different, personality or comfort level. What might be a conflict to one person means basically nothing to another. In those situations, though, where you are needing to step in and sort of mediate, I think that it helps just to have someone sort of translate what the other side is saying. So when you as a manager or HR, whatever you are, mediator, if you recognize that there are completely different personalities in the room here, it's best to sort of prep those each individually in private conversations and sort of help them vocalize how the other person is best able to interpret it. And so that's kind of what I mean by translate, for each individual party, so you can get past the point of thinking they're offending the other one or the other one being offended and actually move on to the resolution phase. So, Shelly, obviously you've been in these discussions before, just, anytime, right? So when you're resolving conflict between, two or more employees, where is a good place to start?
You talk about a loaded question, Jenna. Well, it depends. It depends on location. So maybe and it depends on when the conflict takes place. So sometimes conflict can crop up in a conversation with three people in the hall or in a certain room. And maybe it's right then and there that you need to just address it and nip it in the bud and just say, okay, you know what, guys, people, we're not going to go there with this. We're not going to allow this to escalate. And right then and there, you get to the bottom of the issue and deal with it. Now, sometimes it's something that's been brewing and festering, and you're maybe not even aware of it as a manager, but you might be eventually getting little whispers about this and that and the other. And so instead of just ignoring those little whispers, we really as leaders should get to the bottom of that as well. And so that, in most cases, that's probably when you're going to get those little whispers and you're maybe not aware of it, because we're all working, right? We're all trying to get our job done. And so in that case, you want to kind of gather the facts from each party and, like you said, have a translation. Maybe it's a structured meeting with both parties involved. Maybe it is just a meeting with each side and just say, okay, this is what I understand. Can you help me understand from your point of view, or what more do I need to know in order to help you, in order to get past this conflict and get moving on with things? So, Jenna, and I kind of answered my own question a little bit, but do we sit down with all parties and have a discussion, or can we have those side conversations? Which has been the most effective way to have that courageous conversation, or is it a depends?
It's always a depends, right?
For sure.
I think most often we operate in the gray area and not anywhere, yeah, it's just more in between. That's kind of where we operate. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it depends. Personally, most often I do think it's best to meet individually in a, of course, private discussion to sort of gather, information but also to cool off. I mean, when we're talking conflict resolution, there is emotion tied to it. There's, this internal sort of struggle tied to it, whether it's one-sided or not. I don't really know. Sometimes it's both. But at the same time, I think in order to actually sit down all together and get towards that resolution phase, you need to sort of help that individual, either gather their thoughts, cool off, develop some talking points, or maybe point out a few different things that they didn't see. And so you're helping them go into that, conversation basically on their best, putting their best foot forward and not, looking like a what kind of a deal. So you're helping them realize that, maybe there's a different side to the story. Maybe there's a reason why that person did what they did or always do what they do, and they just don't see it. So you're helping them gather all the facts just as much as you're gathering all the facts kind of from them too, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
But, so Shelly, is there a difference between conducting an investigation and mediating a discussion? And maybe when should we do either or both?
Great question. So, like you said before, everything is kind of on a case-by-case basis. But we really should be doing kind of a little bit of investigating prior to any discussion with anybody. Kind of gather the facts, figure out what you know about things so you're not going into a conversation blind. Sometimes it can be a discovery meeting with somebody to figure things out. But as far as a formal investigation, we really don't need to worry about having a formal investigation unless it's unlawful or if it's against company policy. Then it should be conducted and then documented and acted upon, because these things are unlawful, they're against policy, and they're highly impactful. They go a little bit beyond the discussion phase and the coaching phases. So by all means, absolutely, investigations, if there's any wind of when you're grabbing the facts that something was against policy or unlawful. So Jenna, have you ever inadvertently had to have one of those conversations, these courageous conversations about conflict in front of a group? And how did you handle it?
Yeah, I think I don't ever think it's, good to fight fire with fire, right? So to speak. But at the same time, I do think that there are things that need to be addressed. But regardless of the situation, I mean, yeah, sometimes you need to say something in the moment for not only, your personal integrity, but also to set the situation straight too. And so, sort of nipping it in a professional way, as it comes up, sometimes, yeah, you need to do that. But I always think that it's good to come back around later after you've maybe had a little time to decompress, and then, sort of point out why you felt you needed to do that. Like I said earlier, I think, understanding and communication are two very different things. But I also think that those are, kind of the root of a lot of conflict. So just hashing it out and talking about it, I think is the best way to go forward. So like you said, it doesn't sit and sort of fester. So question of all questions regarding conflict resolution, Shelly, which types of conflict resolution issues are hardest to resolve? Is it task-based things, leadership conflict, work style conflict, or personality conflict?
Oh, personality conflict for sure. You know, with the task-based conflicts, usually it's easier to present the task in front of somebody and in front of the group, and you all are able to look at that task and say, okay, how do we fix this? Easy, check. Leadership conflicts, it's a matter of, you know, just having that discussion with folks and saying, okay, well, although you may not know what's going on in the background, these are some things that drive this leader to do it a certain way. And leadership conflicts is sometimes just a leadership style that's different from what maybe an employee expected. Work style conflicts, somebody maybe just has a different way of completing tasks. And usually those ones don't crop up as much. They kind of just get brushed off. They're like, okay, hey, if the task is getting done, no worries. It's those personality conflicts. And so we all have different personalities and we're all working in the same working environment. So maybe something that I do might rub the next guy wrong and it doesn't affect me. Like you talked about before, I may sniffle and it just grates under somebody's skin. I have no clue that I'm sniffling and those sorts of things. So those little nuances. So usually what approach that we've taken is just a coaching approach. And like you said before, to that translation. So if somebody's like, you know what, man, this person does this and they're snippy about that, maybe just sitting back and talking with the person that's got the complaints, that has the conflict with the other one, to just have that opportunity to identify that there is a conflict, but also let them know that there's some light in this conflict, because this conflict challenges us to grow as a person in our role, and it helps us explore different options together. So, okay, so how can I get past somebody sniffling? Well, maybe I need to wear some earbuds and listen to some music while I'm doing my work, or maybe I just need to be okay with somebody sniffling. Because it's funny, we come up with the silliest things to be nitpicky about when it comes to personality conflict. And it starts with maybe a sniffle, and then it's, oh, well, she does this wrong, or he does that wrong. And is it really wrong?
That's the hard part, right? That it's not always wrong. There's not always something to sort of pick out and say, oh yeah, we can develop this or not, but
it's just different.
It's just different.
Yeah. Well, that's all I had for questions for you for today's courageous conversation on conflict resolution. Jenna, do you have anything else for me?
I don't today, but I would just say that if anyone out there is listening and has questions for Shelly or I, or would like to reach out, please feel free to do so. Or if you have any other ideas in terms of topics that you would like for us to sort of dissect, please let us know and we'd be happy to incorporate it.
Thanks again for your time, everyone, and we look forward to you joining us next time on Courageous Conversations.
Have a good day. Thanks, Shelly.
Thanks, Jenna.